Inamomoane,
Alamanahea
inakaamo'ole,
Walea
inaami,
Hanoma
unoko'ambe'e.
Weo. Hi, beautiful hearts, and welcome back to Two Open Hearts. I'm Carissa,
And I'm Susan.
and today we are going to talk to you about connecting with your heart space and why that is so important.
Yes, today we're going to be talking about trusting yourself and trusting how you feel in different situations.
Yes, because we've been talking and feeling and knowing, and our hearts, I believe, our hearts come in to this life knowing our path and our goals and our highest good. I think that programming, those things we picked before we returned to this life, is all carried in the heart. So when you have to make a tough decision, or not a tough decision, but a decision all the same, when you feel like you need to follow guidance or are unsure about it, and just pretty much every dang day of your life, the more you connect with your heart, whether it's a big dang decision or whether it's just living and just following having your best life, connecting with your heart is going to be kind of imperative to that.
It is. I think that it affects everything from um, going to the store, deciding which way to travel. Sometimes you'll get a knowing that maybe you shouldn't leave right now. Maybe you should do something else before you go. And maybe when you're traveling somewhere, you have a normal path that you may go, or you have an idea of which way that you want to go. And somehow you have an inner knowing that maybe you should take a different route. And at those times, you just need to trust yourself and follow follow that intuition, that inner knowing.
Yep. And if you're lucky, it'll be a day where you get good validation because you'll look and find out there was a car accident or a traffic jam or something on that road. Sometimes you get the validation that you made the right choice, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you get the validation because you didn't listen and you didn't make the right choice, and then you end up in the traffic jam that you might have missed otherwise.
Yes, I think all of us have probably had situations where we've had that intuition give us a nudge, and we've just ignored it, just dismissed it, and we've continued on. And most of the time, I think that most all of us had have fallen into the repercussions pretty quickly of what they were trying to help us, what we were trying to help us avoid, with that inner knowing, with that inner voice trying to steer us in a different direction.
Yep. And Susan and I were kind of talking back and forth before the video about the differences between inner knowing, guidance, and intuition, and your heart knowing. And I think there's some complexities to it. We were having a little bit of trouble getting to the nitty gritty. So the thing that we came up with that made the easiest sense, I think, is that even if you are given guidance from your spirit team, your angels, your team, if it comes in and you immediately know, yes, I hear that, let's not turn on 4th Street today, and you know that it's true, that means that not only are you receiving guidance from above, but your heart is checking it out and feeling the divine truth of it. And that's why you have that inner knowing instantly, because it's working together. So sometimes we'll talk about receiving guidance and taking it, but it's because if you feel and you know that you're supposed to take it, your heart's already in that process.
Yes, I think that we definitely are. Our heart knows, and our heart feels what is true. And I think that in our lives, whenever there's a question, because sometimes we will even hear different information, we'll hear information from one source and then something completely different from another source. And at that point, we need to rely on what we feel in our hearts to be true, as and to proceed with that. And I think we always need to trust always in what our heart is telling us.
Mm-hmm. And you guys might be thinking, why are they even talking about this if it's something that's just there that we do all the time? Well, a few reasons. One, we don't always get the same guidance and we don't always have the same knowing And we're not all practiced in actually feeling our heart, right? Some of us get by with already aligning or having our team give us a guidance and our heart just knows. And some of us get derailed with traumas, a lot of traumas. And so for those of us who carry a lot of traumas or traumas in certain places, I mean, everyone has trauma. And so we're going to make a future video on ways that you can release some of that, because everybody has trauma and that comes into play all the time in your decision making as well. Not every decision, obviously, but in some of them. And I had a point and now it's eluding me, but I think it was something along the lines of it's important to be able to connect in with your heart, because some of us, and me included up until the last 6 years, less than that, last 5 years really, didn't know how to connect with my heart to verify my feelings. I skirted by really well just on life. But once I began my spiritual journey and my awakening and my opening up things, it got harder in points to discern whether things were traumas or whether they were true guidance. And that's something that is not normal for everybody. Some people, like Susan, you want to tell them a little bit more about your kind of experience from childhood with feeling it?
Well, I've always had an inner knowing, and I've always had very good intuition. I haven't always listened to it, as happens with all of us. But in those moments when I have not followed it and had to deal with the consequences of that, it's shown me that I really need to listen. Um, so it is something that I had frequently growing up. Uh, I would just have an inner knowing of different things to avoid. Um,
Or go
many different
towards, right?
Right, or something to go towards, yeah. Either go in a certain direction or not to go in a certain direction. I did try when I was younger to follow that guidance, follow that intuition, especially after some times of not. And to I still to this day try to always follow that intuition. I don't always succeed. There are moments sometimes when it might be a situation where it seems kind of a silly thing. And I'm like, does it really matter? And the consequences are that it really did matter. Maybe it wasn't something really bad, but it was an uncomfortable situation. So again, I've been um, just learning the lesson to always listen to my intuition.
Yes, and that brings up a good point. If you don't feel like you are full and overflowing with self-trust at this time, or being able to always discern, if that's your goal and if that's your intention to get better at and to be able to rely on yourself and to feel your heart space and connect in with yourself, then you will get there. So for me, I have not always been in a place of strong self-trust. In fact, I've that's been one of my main struggles. I think I've got, like, everyone comes in this life with, I'd want to say, like, at least three main things they're working off from many lives. And for me, self-trust was a piece of that. And so I've had trouble sometimes knowing to trust self. And that's been an ongoing lesson and an ongoing improvement. And I'm in a really great place right now and have been, but it's always improving. So you may be like me, where that's a thing. I'm sure I had intuitive guidance as a child, but I know it was so much more limited than what my mom was able to get, and that was because of different things I came in this life to do. So mine kind of opened up in my late 20s, and that's when I found out I was an empath and all sorts of things I had no idea of before, because I had been so shut down and so locked off that I didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And for me on this path, it's been super valuable to literally learn how to connect in with the heart space. And I have a list here. I think I was going to talk about something else before I totally go into that, but just to be able to delve all the way in and feel what my heart wants. That's been fantastic for the last 2 years, at being able to really trust when I know something is right or for my highest good. Because again, when we connect in with our hearts, the important thing to remember is that it means it's right for you. Doesn't mean it's right for everybody else. It means it's right for your path, for your highest good. And no matter what anyone else is choosing or doing, you need to try to have compassion for them. You may need to set healthy boundaries, but have compassion for those around you and know that your heartfelt feelings are not necessarily opinions, but they are just for you. They do not dictate the world. They do not dictate other people's lives. So just being able to find your path and your choices and your directions and things is super awesome. And it's super important. And so that's why the guides were pestering me to kind of talk about it today, because I've been doing it a lot this summer. And this is where I want to bring in the pitfalls. there's there have been times for both Susan and I where, like she was saying, where she didn't listen to the guidance. And normally it's really small repercussions. But we've kind of identified two main pitfalls for situations that we have most often failed to follow our own guidance. So the first one, like we were mentioning, would be if your mind gets in the way. So mind versus inner knowing. So you hear guidance from a guide, or all of a sudden you know things, or your heart is just screaming red flags, something happens. So you know either to avoid something, or you're supposed to go towards something, or you're supposed to do something really silly. Like maybe you just bought a new item of clothing and for some reason you're getting the message not to wear it today. And you're like, well, why can't I wear my new shirt? What is up with that? But there's reasons. So the pitfall would be getting into your mind about it instead of actually listening.
Yes, you really do need to trust. And I can't emphasize enough how important that it is to get into our heart space, to get quiet and to just get into our heart space and just listen to what our heart has to say. And um, sometimes with some things, it doesn't require really going into your heart space for real long, but maybe just listening, just knowing there's a reason and trusting that there's a reason why you should or why you shouldn't do something.
Yep, not letting your thoughts and your mind think you out of the guidance or the knowing you are given, instead of thinking, well, that just seems silly, like you were saying. Just follow it, because there's something unforeseeable by you and your logic at that moment that very much would have been easier, smoother, or happier if you had just listened.
Yes, definitely happier and smoother if you just listen. And even for things as simple as when to leave the house to go to the grocery store, especially if you don't have a deadline or you're not under a time crunch, and you can allow yourself to have a little bit of time to just wait and check back in before you leave. All of these things it's so important. I do believe that it protects you from different things, that intuition, that inner knowing protects you from even probably getting into car accidents sometimes, or any manner of different things.
Yeah, even just being uncomfortable, just being in an uncomfortable social situation or something of that nature. So it can be small or big, but it always is going to feel better if you've listened, is the rule of
Yes.
thumb.
Yes, it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be just something as simple as being uncomfortable, but you will always be far more comfortable if you listen.
Yes. So feeling your heart. And when we say listen, we mean specifically to the heart. So if you're getting guidance and you're not sure who it's from, if you don't all of a sudden feel, yeah, I need to take that, if you're unsure, then you can always use your heart to sort it out and make sure it's guidance you should follow. Most of the time, I mean, if it's your spirit team, it usually is just amazing guidance. One thing Susan and I do to set the bar really high is we have established that in this lifetime, because of the kind of healing work we do, because of the love we want to spread to others, we don't want to get entangled or sticky or messed up with beings who are not all in with selflessness and unconditional love. So we both set parameters for ourselves that we will only work with members of our team, with members of our star teams and our angels and everybody, even if I know they're all love, I'll still put this specification down. My dragons, my spirit guides, I will only work with those who are currently and for this lifetime who are working with the highest vibration of unconditional love. And that's my parameter. That has to be their goal. I know there's value to beings who haven't decided or who do some things unconditionally and some things selfishly, but I'm not interested in working with them and getting their guidance in this life. I love them. I send them compassion. But for now, with the people I'm trying to help and with myself that I'm trying to help, I need those beings who are working with unconditional love. And that's it. Like maximum Christ consciousness, love. That's the beings that can help me out. And there's plenty of them. There are thousands, there are hundreds of thousands, there are probably millions who are working at that caliber who will come in and help us in our lives. So I urge you, pick your standards and then state them out loud. Even when you're calling in your team, I don't just say, hey, my team. I say, hey, my team of the highest vibration of unconditional love. Come on in.
Yes, setting your intentions of what it fits for you is so important because intention trumps all. So when you set your intentions, when you decide what it is that you want to do and who you want to work with, then to set those intentions and get them put out there is one of the most important things that you can do.
Mm-hmm. And it even goes a little above intention in this place because as humans, we have divine free will. And so it's like actually more like cosmic universal law. So if we say, I only invite in beings of the highest vibration of unconditional love, that's all you're going to get. And if any are breaking that law, then they can have other repercussions. That's all I get when that's all I call. It's a law. They can't break it. They can't come in otherwise.
Yes, that's very, very true. They can't break it. We do have free will here. And so what we agree to is what we agree to. And we are protected in that.
And that may help you if you've had issues trusting self or trusting things to know that you have that kind of power to call in only the teams that you want to work with and they're ready and they're willing to help you. Um, then you can start to trust the guidance you receive from them and also your own guidance. And it's super imperative to learn that. And it's no one is going to know your path, your heart. No one's going to know your heart better than your heart. Your heart knows. So just getting in touch with it. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how I've gotten in touch with it and some ways that Susan does. But I want to talk about the second pitfall first. So the other time in our life, besides things just logically not seeming important or logically not lining up for us to follow our guidance, the other main time that I've ever slipped up and not followed my intuition, my heart, my guidance has been if there's a situation in which I respect somebody. So somebody I highly respect. I respect them as a person, as a friend, as a professional, as anything, they maybe get really great guidance. They might have really great intuition and I can see it. I'm like, dang, they're good. They're good at receiving guidance. And there's been situations that they are in that really don't even have anything to do with them necessarily, but there may be other people involved. And by nature of that person being there, I'm like, well, they are here. So I must be able to be here because their guidance let them be here and they hear their guide so well that I should be here too. Sometimes I'm not supposed to be there. So letting my respect for someone and my trust in someone else and my seeing that they are really connected overwhelm or trump my own guidance for myself has gotten me into trouble a few times. Not overwhelmingly many, because the times it has, they've been really strong lessons. So that doesn't happen a whole lot. But I think that's a place that it's easy to.
Yes, I think it happens very easy just by sometimes by association, we want to trust by association. And we still, no matter what situations we're in or who we're dealing with, ultimately, and so for yourself, you just always want to trust and fall back on yourself. Don't trust someone by association. Heck, don't even really, we're not asking you to even believe wholeheartedly what we say. Check in with yourself and see how that feels with you. because ultimately that's the most important thing, is what you're feeling, how you feel. And it's okay if what you're feeling really isn't in alignment with anyone else. Just trust yourself, and always trust that guidance. That's your best bet, is to always trust your guidance.
Yes, trust that hard. And it's not always easy because sometimes you can end up feeling isolated. Let's say everyone goes and trusts, or maybe someone you really respect has a totally different opinion about something than you do. And I don't mean opinion that's matterless, right? Like it becomes maybe their life mission, or they're really pushing something and you just don't align with it. And you're like, that's just not for me. It can feel isolating sometimes then to have to not agree with someone or not jump in with the crowd. But even if it's isolating, first of all, know that there are other people out there whose hearts are telling them the same thing your heart is in every situation. You are not alone, and you've got your team, and you've got hundreds of millions of beings helping you at any moment. You are not alone, no matter if you have to step back or not. And I understand that it can be isolating because I've felt isolated and I've felt abandoned by a community of people because of something my heart really just was not on board with. And that's okay. And I'm better off for just having peacefully stepped back and kind of closed off the things that might have put it in your face. Make sure you put up your boundaries. If you have this information, that isn't for you coming in your face all the time, set a boundary. Maybe delete the app, maybe just back off for a while. Hint, hint of the app. So just get yourself some space, take care of you. And that's when you'll realize how not alone you are, by not letting that, the differences be in your face all the time. Just go be, trust your heart, and everything will be okay. And you'll eventually attract others then that are in alignment with you. And then you really won't be alone anymore.
Yep, that's it. And I think if you're feeling that way at all, just set an intention that you'll find your soul family. You'll find those whose thoughts align with yours, because they're out there, and
Mhm.
you'll be guided, and other people will be guided to you.
Yes, your heart will tell you things it will spark light in other people's hearts. Like hopefully our hearts are sparking some light for your hearts, but if they're not and what we're saying doesn't resonate, like Susan said, forget it. Just say, well, that's nice those sweet ladies said that, but I don't feel it. And so just disconnect. We're not meant to tell anyone else what to do. We're here to follow our own heart. Which leads us finally into ways that you can practice this, because it kind of is practice. If it's not something that's been strong for you your whole life, which if it is, awesome sauce, keep doing it. You still may fall into pitfalls if you're not careful, even if it's strong for you, because crap happens. Trust in self first. But if you need extra help, I needed a little more to sort out. What the heck is my heart saying? I don't know what it's saying. I've been in some situations where I feel stuck in the mud and it takes me forever to figure it out. But the way that never fails is connecting in. So when I say that, I literally mean, one meditation I'm going to highly recommend is by Drunvalo, Melchizedek, and I'll try to attach it in the little tag area so that way you can click on it. And I intend to make a meditation that goes along with that. So you'll also find one on our channel that helps you connect with your heart. But you literally kind of take your spirit, which is normally it's up in your mind. You have this light of you, your essence, your soul, and you can drop it down into your heart. And you can do that by either seeing that light, that little orb, go all the way down, or you can even just put the attention on your heart. What does it feel? How does it feel? There are some things you need to sort out once you get to your heart. Susan, how do you get to your heart?
Well, basically doing meditation, and just dropping down into my heart space, drop in my light down into my heart space, just as you just described.
And sometimes just sitting with things for a while, right? Like not always making decisions right away if you're unsure.
Yes, sometimes just sitting very quietly. Again, basically getting into my heart space, but sitting quietly with something, um, if I'm uncertain of which direction to go with it, sitting quietly and just listening to myself, getting into my heart space and just feeling it, which direction I need to go.
Beautiful. It is beautiful. And if you've never done this, some things to be aware of: if you carry heaviness in your heart, if you carry sadness for the world, or sadness or guilt, grief, all sorts of things can make your heart heavy. And if you carry that, when you drop down into your heart, sometimes you feel that, and then you want to be like, ew, I don't want to be here. This feels heavy. Ugh. And it might not have anything to do with your decision yet. So make sure you kind of check in with how your heart feels. And if it feels heavy, there are ways you can ask your angelic team, you can ask your dragon team, you can ask your team to help you lift the weight of it. You can also go see an energy practitioner. There's a million ways, you find the one that fits you and take action. You can visualize the heaviness lifting off. There are a ton of ways, but if it feels heavy when you go to your heart space and you're not already in a predicament, like I recommend, if you're having a happy day right now and you're just watching this, go check in with your heart and see what it feels like, so you know what its kind of resting point is. And if it's heavy, do what you can to lighten it up. Take a bath, maybe use some crystals.
Go outside, be in nature. That always helps. I know it's too cold right now where we're at to go out barefoot, but when it is a nice day, to go barefoot on Mama Earth is always a great way to connect in. Hug a tree, sing, dance. Um, all of those things can help us connect in with ourselves too.
Mm-hmm. And release the heaviness that we don't need to carry, because when you're singing, your heart can go, oh, I don't need all this heavy. I can be in joy. So it can be very useful. And another thing to be aware of when you get into your heart, let's say you've settled and you've kind of set your attention there, and you're hanging out, and you now know, okay, I've got my heaviness off. I'm just kind of at neutral. I'm going to bring in this decision or this thing I'm not sure about, or I think I'm sure, but I want to be double sure, right? I want to be triple sure that I know what I feel about it. So bring that thought, bring that situation into your heart and see how it feels. And even when you do this, there's another thing to be aware of, because sometimes from past lives or this life or a whole manner of lives, we carry trauma. So it's important, if you feel a reaction that's really strong, either way, for good or bad, or for what, left or right, whatever the heck, up or down, whatever you're asking about. If you feel a strong reaction and you don't instinctively know, like if you have to ask about it because it's not so obvious to you that it's your heart right out the get-go, then you need to ask, is this reaction because my heart feels that? Or is this reaction because I have a trauma that is so deep that it feels really strong? And you'll get an answer really quick on that. You'll know whether it's like, yeah, my heart says heck no, or whether it's like a part of me goes, I don't wanna, but your heart's like, no, it's really something good. And if you run into that, then you're going to have to do some work to release that trauma. And again, there's 100 million ways, there's 100 million books. We do energy work. We like Reiki and angels and dragons and our spirit teams and our spirit guides, and they help us. And we're going to release something in the future, which if you're watching this in the future, it might be released in the past, you know how that works, about how we release traumas, because there's a bunch of ways and you find the one that fits you.
Yes, there are so many ways to release the trauma. And the main thing, I guess, would be to recognize it. And again, once you're getting into your heart space, you should, when you're asking, you will know whether this is something that is a trauma.
Yep. And I don't think, even if you are confused, I don't think, one thing we have learned is ask. We've learned this as throughout our spiritual process. And sometimes you don't get all the information if you don't ask. Like you'll ask one thing, like, who's my spirit guide? Or what's this situation? But then you ask more, ask details, ask specifics, keep asking. When we started, this is just like a side note, when we started channeling people's guides in our Reiki sessions, we would say, who's with them? And then a guide would come up. And if we didn't ask any other questions, that's it. We'd say, oh, this guide is with you. And then we'd do our Reiki and send them on their way. And eventually we learned to say, do you have a message? And then they'd give us a message. And then we'd say, do you want to help them with healing? And then they'd help, so the more we asked, the more we got. If we only asked the one thing, that's all we got. And I think it's kind of silly, and it's something you have to train yourself to do, but we always got what we asked for. So if you're in your heart and you ask, is this trauma? You'll know. And then you can say, how can I get rid of this trauma? Or where does it come from? Just keep asking questions.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I meant without actually giving details about that. So thank you for explaining that. Because when you get into your heart space, if you ask, if it's a trauma, they're going to let you know that it's a trauma. And if it's not. So absolutely what you said, it's so important to ask questions. They're willing and ready to answer any questions that we have, but we have to ask in order to get answers.
Which I know personally I've been frustrated with. I'm like, what do you I asked if you were here. Of course I want you to give a message and to do all the things, but no. So it's another practice. Just practice asking, practice checking in with your heart and trusting it, and try to live through your heart some days, try to go drop your spirit down and just be in your heart as long as you can. Something stressful might come up and you'll go boop back into your head, and then you gotta
Yes.
go back down. Because the more you practice that, the easier compassion is, the easier unconditional love is. And it just helps you align with your highest good so you can flow into what you are meant to flow to that day. You can flow towards your heart's desires, right? The more you connect with your heart, the more you can flow towards its desires. Makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me too. And it makes sense that you would have to practice the way that our lives, most of us weren't brought up always going into our heart space. We were brought up very differently, actually, to not even really trust. Um, Most people aren't brought up to trust that inner knowing, to trust that intuition. And it does take practice. It takes practice to get into your heart space and to ask. It as silly as it sounds, it does take practice to ask. And it takes practice to listen to that intuition. So
It
it's
takes practice
something,
to ask, because that's another one that this society almost shuns, right? Like, you're not supposed to ask too many questions in school. You're not supposed to ask too many questions, or, it's just not a thing.
it, that's right. Even at home, and I know it's long ago and far away, thank goodness, the era where children were to be seen and not heard. Um, it's a good thing now. Children are to be heard more, and that's changing. But it's still, a lot of us were brought up where we weren't encouraged to ask questions. We weren't encouraged to go into our heart space. So it's something that will take practice, but it is a beautiful end result.
Yeah, practice is the way. And so there will be a video where I walk you through a meditation called Sacred Heart Space. Look for that. But if you decide to practice in other ways, like, again, I said, there's a million ways for the millions of people to learn. So if you have some other way that aligns with you, then enjoy the journey.
Yes, there's no wrong way. There's no wrong way to do things. There's several ways, several opportunities. So um, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to our channel. And we hope you all have a wonderful day.